Welcome, dear listener, to a journey beyond the clouds, where myths breathe and legends live. Tonight, we rise to Mount Olympus, the shining peak above all lands, where the gods once walked in timeless glory. Among them stands Zeus, the ruler of the skies, keeper of thunder, and guardian of harmony in the heavens. But this story is not of battles or storms that frighten. It is of silence, of wonder, and of the hidden meaning behind the sound of thunder. Long ago, the skies fell quiet. No flash, no roar, no trembling of mountains. Mortals gazed upward and whispered, had Zeus forgotten his mighty voice? The gods of Olympus gathered, puzzled by the silence that spread through the realms. Without thunder, the balance of nature faltered, and hearts grew uneasy. Yet, behind the stillness, Zeus carried a secret. For thunder is not only power, it is a message, a rhythm, a reminder that the skies are alive and watching. Come with me, step by step, as we uncover this tale. A story of reflection, of connection, and of how silence gave new meaning to the roar of Olympus. The skies above Greece stretched wide, endless, and silent. No rumble, no spark, no whisper of storm hidden within the blue. Villagers lifted their eyes and found only stillness, heavy and strange. They were used to the sound of thunder, sudden and bold, echoing across valleys. It was more than a storm. It was the voice of Zeus, the guardian of balance. But now the heavens seemed asleep, stripped of their rhythm and might. Children asked their parents why the sky had lost its roar. The elders sat quietly, unable to answer, their hearts unsettled. In temples, priests offered prayers, asking if the king of Olympus had turned away. Even the animals sensed the absence. Birds circled restlessly, and the winds moved without song. The earth itself seemed to wait, as though holding its breath. For centuries, thunder had not only startled, but comforted. It meant that the skies were alive, watching and guiding. Now fields lay dry, and clouds drifted like lost travelers without purpose. Farmers sowed seeds with worry, uncertain if rain would come. Fishermen looked to the horizon and saw only endless calm waters. They missed the storm, not for fear, but for the promise it carried. High on Olympus, the gods too noticed the strange silence. They looked at one another, their halls shimmering under quiet skies. Apollo asked why the sun shone with no storm to follow. Athena wondered if wisdom had gone unheard without thunder to remind. Poseidon frowned, for the seas lost their rhythm without the sky's command. Even gentle Hera felt the weight of silence pressing upon the heavens. It was as if a great story had paused, leaving the world unturned. And at the center of it stood Zeus, silent, thoughtful, distant. He gazed down from the peak of Olympus and felt the hush. His hand rested upon the thunderbolt, yet he did not raise it. He listened. He watched. He wondered if the silence carried a lesson. For power unused can speak as loudly as power unleashed. The mortal world grew restless, yet curious. They whispered stories in markets, in fields, in hidden corners of their homes. Some said Zeus had grown weary of storms. Others believed he was testing the courage of mortals. And a few, with hope in their hearts, thought silence meant peace. But even peace feels fragile when balance is broken. Nights passed with stars bright and clear, untouched by cloud. Days came and went, with no shadow of storm on the horizon. And still, the question lingered. Where was the thunder of Olympus? The silence stretched like a thread connecting earth and sky. It pulled at hearts, stirred the winds, and bent the rhythm of life. And so the world waited, uncertain, for the moment when silence would end. For every story has a pause, and every pause prepares the return of sound. The heavens held their breath, and the earth listened to the waiting sky. For in stillness, meaning grows, and in silence, thunder finds its voice. The skies above Greece remained quiet, yet alive with unseen promise, a promise that Zeus himself carried hidden within his silent heart. On Mount Olympus, the golden halls gleamed beneath a sky too quiet for comfort. The gods gathered, their voices low, their eyes cast toward the still horizon. Never before had thunder vanished so completely. leaving only uneasy silence. It was not only mortals who felt the change, but the divine as well. For thunder was more than sound. It was the heartbeat of heaven itself. Without it, balance wavered, as though a great chord had lost its note. Athena, wise and thoughtful, spoke first among the council of gods. The silence grows heavier each day. Mortals begin to lose faith. Her words stirred the chamber, for faith was the bridge between heaven and earth. Apollo, bright as the sun, frowned with concern upon his radiant face. The fields wither without rhythm. Music itself seems muted in the air. Poseidon struck his trident softly upon the marble floor, his voice deep and steady. The sea drifts without command. Waves lack their pulse as if awaiting a call. Hera, regal and calm, raised her hand to quiet their rising unease. Let us not mistake stillness for abandonment. Zeus has not turned away. Yet even she, queen of the heavens, felt the weight of unanswered questions. For centuries, thunder had been a signal, a bond, a divine reassurance. Now, its absence echoed louder than any storm could roar. The gods wondered, was this silence a test, or was it warning? Hermes, ever the messenger, paced quickly, restless under the stilled skies. I hear whispers from the mortal world, he said, his tone sharp with urgency. They wonder if Olympus has grown silent because it no longer cares. The council stirred, for such doubt could erode the pillars of belief. For gods are sustained not only by power, but by the trust of mortals. Demeter, gentle mother of harvests, spoke softly with sorrow in her voice. My fields crave the rain. Without thunder's promise, seeds lose their courage. Her words touched them all, for the cycle of life hung fragile in the balance. Ares crossed his arms, though even he, spirit of strength, remained subdued. There is no battle to fight here, only a void we cannot strike. In that moment, silence itself felt like an unseen opponent, not a foe of blades and shields, but of patience and doubt. Zeus, though present, remained quiet, seated upon his towering throne. His eyes reflected both sky and earth, his expression thoughtful and stern. He did not yet lift the thunderbolt that rested by his side. Instead, he listened to the voices of his fellow immortals. He heard their worry, their confusion, and their longing for balance restored. But more than that, he listened to the silence itself. For silence, he knew, can hold a truth that sound often hides. Still, the council pressed, for their realms depended on thunder's return. Athena urged patience. Apollo longed for music. Poseidon demanded rhythm. Each god carried a vision of what the world should be. Yet all agreed that the sky without thunder felt incomplete, unfinished. Zeus rose at last, and the chamber fell into expectant hush. His presence alone was power, yet his voice was steady, calm. I hear your fears. I see the unease spread across land and sea. The silence is not emptiness. It is a lesson yet to be known. His words carried across Olympus, soft but unshakable. The gods listened, uncertain but respectful of his choice. And so, the council adjourned, leaving questions unanswered, hearts still restless. The skies remained quiet, the world waiting for what was to come. And though the silence deepened, so too did the sense of mystery. For even the gods themselves now wondered what Zeus intended to reveal. Zeus sat alone on the highest throne of Olympus, watching the endless horizons stretch without sound. The air was still, yet within his mind a storm brewed, though no lightning broke the sky. He held the thunderbolt, its glow faint, as though it too shared his silence. Once, thunder had been his proudest gift, a sign of his rule, a voice of power. Now, he wondered if it had become too familiar, no longer stirring awe in mortal hearts. He remembered the days when storms inspired prayers, songs, and reverence across the land. But he also saw how fear often walked beside wonder, blurring meaning with dread. Zeus asked himself if thunder was meant only to command, or perhaps to teach. For what is power without purpose? And what is might without wisdom to guide it? His thoughts wandered through centuries of storms, each strike a mark upon the world. He recalled mountains trembling, seas roaring, forests bending beneath his sky-born voice. Yet he also remembered the children, clutching their mothers, fearing the roar above. He remembered how mortals sometimes saw punishment where he intended only guidance. That memory weighed heavy, stirring doubts in the heart of the sky's ruler. Could silence be a gift greater than the fiercest storm? Zeus rose from his throne and walked the marble halls of Olympus, each step echoing. The halls were grand, but they too seemed subdued beneath a silent sky. He paused before the great balcony, where the clouds drifted lazily without spark. Below, the world stretched wide, beautiful, yet waiting for something it could not name. Zeus placed the thunderbolt aside, letting it rest upon stone, silent as the heavens. He touched the air, feeling currents that once carried storms now moving gently. The winds whispered, not of anger, but of longing and patience. In that moment, Zeus realized silence could carry meaning as surely as thunder. It was not absence, but presence in another form, a quieter truth. Still, questions lingered in his heart, deep and unspoken. Would mortals see silence as peace or as weakness in their god? Would the gods themselves remain patient or grow restless with his choice? Zeus looked upon the constellations, patterns carved into eternity above. Even stars spoke without sound, yet their light endured through endless ages. Perhaps thunder, like starlight, must change its meaning to endure. He closed his eyes and listened not to storms, but to the quiet within. In that stillness, he felt a connection deeper than any roar. A bond with earth, with sea, with mortal breath rising toward the sky. He thought of balance, not as force, but as harmony between sound and silence. And he began to see his role, not as a ruler alone, but as a guide. Zeus whispered to himself, though no one else could hear, perhaps thunder must rest, so its return will carry more than power. The words lingered in the air, fragile yet resolute, like the first breeze of dawn. He understood that silence was not retreat, but preparation for renewal. In the absence of storms, meaning would grow, like seeds awaiting rain. When thunder returned, it would not strike in anger, but in wisdom and grace. Zeus lifted his gaze, his heart steadier, though the skies remained hushed. For the first time, he did not fear the silence. Instead, he welcomed it as a teacher, patient and profound. The ruler of Olympus set aside pride and embraced reflection. And thus began his quiet search for the true purpose of thunder. High above the mountains, the winds stirred softly, carrying whispers across the quiet world. They traveled from valleys, across rivers, and over the rooftops of villages below. Zeus leaned from Olympus, listening not with ears, but with the heart of a god. The winds carried stories, small and fragile, yet filled with the voice of mortals. Fathers spoke to sons of the skies that once roared with strength. Mothers told children of nights when thunder rolled, like a great drum of protection. Farmers remembered rains that blessed their fields, guided by the voice of storms. Fishermen recalled lightning striking the horizon, marking safe paths through restless waters. These whispers reached Zeus, woven into the breezes as gentle threads of memory, and among them he heard not fear, but longing, quiet and sincere. Mortals did not miss storms for the terror they brought. They missed them for the comfort, the reminder that God still watched. For thunder had been a bridge, a sound that joined heaven to earth. Now silence left them uncertain, as though that bridge had been withdrawn. Zeus closed his eyes and let the winds tell him every story they carried. He heard laughter of children who once counted flashes in the night. He heard prayers rising with hope, asking not for power but for presence. And he felt their wonder, small yet bright, shining through centuries of storms. It was then Zeus understood. Thunder was not merely a show of force. It was a voice, a rhythm, a connection to the hearts of mortals. Without it, the skies were mute, and mortals felt alone beneath their vast dome. He realized storms had never been about domination. They had been about reminding the world it was alive, awake, and guided. The winds whispered further, bringing even older tales from distant lands. Stories of shepherds who danced as rain returned to thirsty meadows. Songs of poets who found inspiration in the drum of rolling clouds. Legends of elders who taught children to listen, not fear, the voice above. All these voices lived within the winds, carrying a truth long overlooked. Zeus felt the weight of his thunderbolt resting by his side. For the first time, he did not see it as a weapon, but as an instrument of rhythm, a reminder that power is felt through harmony. He let the breeze touch his hand, soft yet insistent, like a friend's whisper. It told him thunder did not need to roar always. Even silence had meaning, shaping the return of sound with deeper purpose. Zeus smiled faintly, a rare softness breaking through the lines of his face. He knew the winds had spoken truth, carried from the hearts of mortals. They missed thunder not to tremble, but to feel connected to the skies. And so, the king of Olympus made a vow within his heart. He would not use thunder simply to command obedience. He would use it to remind, to guide, to bind heaven and earth together. The silence, he saw now, was a pause in the song of creation. And when the next note came, it would echo not in fear but in wonder. The winds carried on, satisfied they had been heard. Zeus lifted his gaze to the horizon and felt new clarity within. For the voice of the sky was not lost, it was only changing. And in its change, thunder would find a truer meaning than ever before. The stars above Olympus glimmered with patient light, watching the world in silent harmony. Zeus sat upon his throne, yet his mind wandered beyond the halls of gold and marble. The echo of mortal voices still lingered in his thoughts, soft as threads of melody. He pondered the nature of his gift, the thunder that once roared with authority. But now he saw it as more than power. It was a bond, a living connection. The halls of Olympus were quiet, yet not empty, for memories stirred within its walls. He recalled the times when gods and mortals shared a closeness woven by faith. Festivals had once lit villages with fire and music in honor of the sky. Prayers had risen like smoke, carrying hope that the heavens would answer kindly. Zeus remembered the laughter, the dances, the hymns sung beneath starlit nights, and he realized something precious. Thunder had always been part of those songs. Without its voice, the music of the world was incomplete, missing its bold refrain. He rose from his throne, the weight of thought heavier than his mighty crown. Each step across Olympus echoed like a heartbeat in the vastness of silence. He walked to the edge, where the sky stretched wide and the earth lay below. There he gazed upon the world, glowing softly in the embrace of night. He saw rivers shining like silver threads, weaving life through valleys and fields. He saw villages asleep, their fires dim, their dreams fragile as drifting clouds. He saw temples once filled with offerings now standing still, touched only by moonlight. The world was waiting, not in fear but in quiet yearning for a sign. Zeus felt the truth within his chest, steady and undeniable as the pulse of time. The silence had not been rejection, but a test, a call to deeper understanding. Thunder was not lost. It awaited its return with purpose renewed. He spoke softly, his words carried by the winds to no ear but his own. Let the voice of the sky return, not as command, but as companionship. He reached for the thunderbolt, its surface glowing faintly with eternal light. The weapon no longer looked fierce. It seemed alive, as though listening too. Zeus lifted it gently, as one might lift an ancient instrument of song. The stars above shimmered brighter, sensing the awakening of an old harmony. The winds circled around him, eager like children awaiting a story. Yet he did not strike, not yet, for thunder must return with meaning. Instead, he let the power hum softly, a low note in the fabric of night. It vibrated through Olympus, through mountains, through rivers flowing far below. Mortals stirred in their sleep, their dreams touched by the faint murmur of skies. They dreamed of light across the horizon, of clouds dancing with living sound. And in those dreams, comfort returned, even if only in whispers. Zeus lowered the thunderbolt, choosing patience over haste, rhythm over noise. He understood now that storms would come not as fury but as guidance. Each roll of thunder would be a word, each flash of lightning a reminder, not of wrath, but of connection, a bridge between worlds unseen. He turned back from the edge, the halls of Olympus glowing faintly in starlight. The silence still remained, yet it was no longer heavy, no longer cold. It had become a pause before the symphony, a breath before the note. Zeus smiled, knowing the world would soon hear the sky speak again. And when it did, it would not shake with fear, but rise with wonder. For thunder, once feared, was ready to be reborn as a song of unity. And the King of Gods, at last, understood the true power of his voice. Dawn crept across the horizon, painting the sky with soft hues of gold and rose. Olympus awoke slowly, its marble halls glowing under the tender light of morning. Zeus stood tall upon the balcony, the thunderbolt resting silent within his grasp. He had carried it through the night, listening to its hum, learning its quiet rhythm. No storm had broken, no lightning had split the sky, yet something within had shifted. The silence no longer pressed upon him. It now felt like a canvas awaiting color. As the sun rose higher, the other gods began to stir within their halls. Hera walked through gardens blooming with eternal flowers, her gaze sharp and thoughtful. Athena studied scrolls in her chamber, wisdom etched across her calm features. Apollo tuned his golden lyre, testing notes that echoed like the rays of morning. They all sensed a change, though none could yet name the source of the feeling. For Olympus itself seemed lighter, as though expectation floated in the air. Zeus watched them with quiet pride, yet also with a deepened sense of duty. He knew thunder would soon return, not to command, but to guide. Still, he hesitated, for timing was as vital as the message itself. He thought of mortals who tilled the earth, sailed the seas, and prayed at shrines. He thought of children who once laughed beneath rolling skies, counting lightning's dance. They were waiting, even if they did not know it, for the song of the heavens. And so he chose patience, letting the world wake fully before he spoke again. The thunderbolt pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat aligned with the rhythm of dawn. Zeus lifted it gently, whispering words that carried no command, only promise. Your voice will return, but as a friend, not a shadow of fear. The winds brushed against him, cool and soft, carrying the scent of mountain pines. They seemed to answer, wrapping around his shoulders like a mantle of trust. Below, the world stirred awake, farmers guiding oxen, children chasing light in fields. Birds sang freely, filling the air with melodies unbroken by storm or silence. The harmony of nature swelled, and Zeus knew this was the moment to listen. For before the thunder could return, he had to understand the world it would touch. He walked among the gardens of Olympus, his steps slow, his thoughts steady. Every leaf, every stone, every stream seemed alive with quiet wisdom. He realized the earth did not fear thunder. It welcomed its balance of rain. The rivers needed storms, the fields needed water, the skies needed sound. Thunder was part of a greater cycle, not above it, but within it. Zeus smiled faintly, the weight of understanding lighter than any crown he wore. He returned to the balcony, gazing out once more upon the waking earth. The thunderbolt glowed softly, ready but waiting, a companion rather than a weapon. Zeus raised it, but not to strike, only to let its light touch the morning air. The glow spread across Olympus, warm and steady, like sunlight breaking through clouds. No roar followed, no crack of lightning, only the hum of presence renewed. And yet, mortals far below lifted their heads, sensing a change in the sky. They felt comfort, though no storm came, as if the heavens had whispered hello. Children pointed to the brightening horizon, their laughter echoing through quiet fields. Priests at temples bowed their heads, their prayers answered not with power but peace. Zeus lowered the thunderbolt, his heart calm, his vow deepening within, for he now knew thunder's return would not be sudden or fierce. It would come as music comes, a rhythm building, a voice rising with grace. And when it arrived, the world would hear not command but companionship. Olympus shone brighter in the morning light, alive with unspoken anticipation. And Zeus, king of the gods, stood ready to let thunder be reborn as song. The day stretched long and golden, its light draping across the peaks of Olympus. Zeus lingered upon the balcony, his gaze drifting to the lands rolling beneath the sky. The thunderbolt in his hand pulsed gently, no longer fierce but alive with steady calm. He traced its glow with his eyes, seeing not fire but rhythm hidden within its core. The thought returned to him. Thunder was more than command, it was song. He whispered the word aloud, letting it echo through the air like a promise. "Song," he said, and the winds answered with a rustle soft as harp strings. Zeus turned inward, walking through Olympus with a pace both steady and thoughtful. The marble pillars reflected light, gleaming like rivers frozen in timeless strength. Statues of heroes stood tall, their stone eyes fixed toward eternity. He passed through halls where gods once debated, their voices rising like waves. Today those chambers were quiet, filled only with the breath of memory. He entered the great hall, where the throne of Olympus stood beneath a vault of sky. Its vastness reminded him of the silence that had stretched too long across the world. And yet, he no longer feared that silence, he honored it as part of the song. For music was not only notes, it was also pauses that gave them shape. Zeus sat upon the throne, the thunderbolt resting across his knees. He closed his eyes, listening not with ears, but with the pulse of the cosmos. In the quiet, he felt the rivers flow, the winds wander, the trees breathe. Each sound carried rhythm. Each moment pulsed with harmony woven into creation. He realized then that thunder was not separate. It was part of this orchestra. And he, its keeper, was no longer a warrior, but a conductor of balance. The weight upon his shoulders shifted, lighter now than in ages past. The gods, sensing the change, gathered quietly at the edge of the hall. Hera stood regal, Athena calm, Apollo glowing with unspoken curiosity. Even Hermes paused his wandering, listening for what Zeus might reveal. They saw their king not as a figure of wrath, but of reflection. Zeus opened his eyes, meeting their gazes with a calm strength. "My voice will not return as thunder alone," he said, his words slow. "It will return as harmony, a bridge between us and the world below." The gods exchanged glances, their silence filled with cautious wonder. Apollo stepped forward, his lyre shining faintly with morning's golden hue. He strummed a chord, soft and clear, that floated like sunlight upon water. The note lingered, merging with the hum of the thunderbolt in Zeus's hand. Together they formed a chord, delicate yet powerful, a union of sound. Zeus smiled, for in that moment thunder and song became one. The hall brightened, as if Olympus itself approved of the union. The gods listened as Apollo played, each note rising in steady grace. Zeus let the thunderbolt answer, its hum weaving beneath the melody. It was not a roar, not a strike, but a heartbeat in rhythm with the song. The music filled Olympus, flowing through pillars, across gardens, into open skies. And below, mortals paused in their tasks, sensing the shift in the heavens. Farmers looked upward, their plows, resting as a strange calm, touched the fields. Sailors at sea felt the air steady, the waves rolling with new rhythm. Children laughed without reason, their hearts lifted by a joy they could not name. The world had heard a fragment of the song. Though no storm had formed, Zeus lowered the thunderbolt, his hand steady, his eyes bright with resolve. The gods bowed their heads, not in fear, but in recognition of wisdom, for they too understood that power without harmony was incomplete. And so, a new truth was born upon Olympus that day. Thunder would return not as fear, but as part of a greater music. Zeus looked to the horizon, the world glowing beneath the waning Sunday. He whispered, almost to himself, "The song has begun." And with that, Olympus stood ready for a future shaped not by command, but by harmony. Night returned to the world, its velvet cloak spread wide across the heavens. The stars shone like scattered embers, bright yet distant, silent in their eternal watch. Olympus stood tall under the starlight, its towers glowing softly with celestial fire. Zeus lingered outside the great hall, the thunderbolt resting in his hand once more. It no longer weighed heavy, for he had learned its voice was not of burden. He held it gently, as one might hold a harp awaiting its song. The winds carried whispers again, soft and winding, full of mortal stories below. They spoke of days spent in labor, nights spent in prayer, hopes woven into dreams. Children laughed under moonlight, playing in fields, their joy bright as sparks. Sailors gazed at constellations, guiding ships through the dark with faith in the sky. Farmers looked at clouds, longing for rain, not with fear but with gratitude. Zeus heard it all. The chorus of mortal life carried upward like incense, and within their voices, he felt no fear, only yearning for connection. He realized thunder had always been their reassurance that the sky still listened. Without it, they wondered if Olympus still watched, if the gods still cared. Zeus lifted his gaze to the constellations painted across the vast black canvas. Each star seemed alive, pulsing like notes upon a celestial lyre. He thought of Apollo's music earlier, the union of song and storm. A smile touched his face, for the harmony still echoed in his chest. The thunderbolt pulsed faintly, glowing as though it too remembered the melody. Zeus whispered to the night, his voice soft, yet steady with promise. The silence ends not with fear, but with a song of belonging. The air grew still, as if the world leaned closer to hear his vow. The gods gathered quietly again, drawn by the weight of the moment. Hera's eyes softened. Athena's wisdom shone. Apollo's lyre hummed faintly at his side. Even Poseidon stilled the restless waves, listening for his brother's voice. Zeus stood taller, the thunderbolt glowing brighter, humming with restrained power. But he did not strike, for the time of violence had passed. Instead, he raised it gently, letting its hum weave with the rhythm of night. The stars responded, glittering brighter, as though singing in their silent way. Apollo strummed a chord upon his lyre, the sound pure as moonlight. The thunderbolt joined, its low hum resonating beneath the bright melody. Together they formed a harmony that rippled through Olympus and beyond. Mortals stirred in their sleep, dreams filled with skies alive with music. They dreamed of storms, not of terror, but of songs guiding their path. Priests awoke, sensing change, their hearts rising with reverence, not dread. Children smiled in dreams, chasing lightning that danced as friendly sparks. The song carried far, touching rivers, forests, mountains, and seas alike. It wove into the breath of the world, becoming part of its heartbeat. Zeus lowered the thunderbolt slowly, the glow settling into quiet strength. He felt peace within, as if the sky itself had exhaled. The gods bowed their heads again, not to authority but to harmony. They too felt the truth. Thunder was no longer wrath, it was belonging. Zeus spoke once more, his voice carrying through halls, gardens, and skies. Let thunder be the bridge, not the wall between heaven and earth. The winds carried his words, repeating them across mountains, valleys, and seas. And everywhere the world listened, its silence filled now with living promise. Zeus looked to the horizon, where dawn would soon paint its colors. He knew the time was near, when thunder would return in full. But when it did, it would not break, it would sing, and the song of Olympus would echo forever, binding gods and mortals as one. The dawn broke gently, painting the horizon with soft hues of rose and gold. Olympus awoke slowly, its marble halls glowing beneath the tender morning light. Zeus stood upon the balcony once more, his eyes steady upon the waking world. The thunderbolt rested at his side, its glow calm, no longer wild or untamed. Birds soared across the sky, their wings cutting arcs of freedom in the air. Their songs mingled with the first warmth of day, weaving a melody of renewal. Zeus breathed deeply, his chest filled with air both light and grounding. The silence that had lingered for ages felt different, now alive, not empty. It was as if the world waited, not in fear, but in anticipation of harmony. The gods gathered once again, each curious to see what would unfold. Hera walked beside him, her presence calm yet regal in the glow of dawn. Athena stood firm, her wisdom reflecting in eyes clear as the morning sky. Apollo cradled his lyre, the strings glistening with the promise of music. Hermes leaned against a pillar, restless yet attentive, his eyes flickering. Poseidon, even from afar, sent a whisper through the waves, ready to listen. Zeus raised his hand, lifting the thunderbolt for all to see. It pulsed gently, humming with rhythm that echoed the heartbeat of creation. The gods leaned closer, their breaths hushed, their gazes fixed on their king. Zeus spoke, his words flowing steady as the river that shaped valleys. For too long, thunder has been a voice of command, a sound of fear. But thunder is also a song, a rhythm that belongs to the world itself. The gods stirred, their silence filled with recognition of his truth. Apollo strummed his lyre, a single note that hung like sunlight in the air. Zeus let the thunderbolt answer, its hum weaving into the melody with ease. The two sounds joined, delicate yet powerful, a union of storm and song. Together they created a harmony that filled Olympus and spilled into the world. Below, mortals felt it in their hearts as warmth, not dread, rising within. Sailors at sea heard waves shift, with a rhythm like music guiding their way. Farmers paused as gentle winds carried calm across their golden fields. Children raised their arms, laughing as sparks of joy danced in the air. The world knew, without words, that the sky had returned with promise. The silence ended not with a roar, but with music soft and vast. The gods stood taller, pride warming their immortal frames in quiet unity. Hera touched Zeus's arm, her voice tender. "This is the way it should be." Athena nodded slowly, her wisdom shining. Power balanced, with harmony endures. Hermes smiled slyly. "Mortals will carry this song farther than we can." Poseidon's waves rose gently, whispering agreement from the depths of the sea. Zeus closed his eyes, listening to the chorus of gods and mortals alike. The thunderbolt hummed brighter, its rhythm no longer his alone to command. It belonged to all the sky, the sea, the earth, and every soul within. Zeus opened his eyes, his gaze steady, his voice calm with clarity. "Let thunder be the heartbeat of Olympus, a song shared by gods and mortals." The words carried through the halls, over mountains, across the endless horizon. The gods bowed their heads, not in fear, but in reverence of harmony. The morning sun rose higher, its light blessing Olympus with golden fire. Zeus smiled softly, his heart lighter than it had been for ages past. The silence was gone, replaced by a song that would never fade. And thus, Olympus stood not as a fortress, but as a beacon of balance, a place where storm and song would forever dance together in unity. The dawn stretched on, and with it, the promise of a new age. An age where thunder no longer divided, but bound the world in harmony. The sun climbed higher, spilling warmth across Olympus in golden rivers of light. The marble pillars glowed, their white stone gleaming as if touched by eternity. Zeus remained upon the throne, the thunderbolt resting softly in his hand. It no longer burned as before, for it had become a beacon of calm. The gods gathered close, drawn by the harmony still echoing in the halls. Their faces carried not tension, but quiet anticipation for what was to come. Apollo stood tall, his lyre cradled as if awaiting its final note. Athena's wisdom lingered in her gaze, sharp yet softened by trust. Hera stood with regal grace, her presence steady as the dawn itself. Even Hermes, restless by nature, leaned forward with genuine stillness. Zeus lifted his eyes to the heavens, vast and endless above Olympus. The sky stretched wide, painted with streaks of gold and pale blue. A silence fell, but it was not heavy, it was alive with promise. The thunderbolt glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the breath of the world. Zeus rose, his voice steady, his tone carrying across the halls. "Olympus was never meant to be a fortress of fear," he declared. "It was meant to be a bridge, a place where harmony finds voice." The gods stirred, their hearts lifting at the weight of his words. Apollo strummed a chord, soft yet radiant, that drifted like light across water. Zeus let the thunderbolt answer, its hum weaving gently into the sound. Together they built a melody, storm and song dancing as one. The pillars seemed to sing, the air alive with resonance, pure and deep. Below, mortals stirred again, their hearts lifting with a joy unnamed. Fishermen at sea felt waves calm, their sails filled with steady wind. Farmers in fields paused, the earth warm beneath their hands. Children laughed, chasing echoes of music that fell like invisible rain. Priests raised their arms, not in fear, but in reverence to the sky. The harmony spread, threading through valleys, rivers, mountains, and seas. It carried a promise that gods and mortals shared one rhythm of being. Zeus lowered the thunderbolt slowly, its glow settling into tranquil strength. His eyes softened, the sternness of command replaced by peace. The gods bowed their heads, not in submission, but in unity. They felt it too that Olympus had found its true song. Hera whispered gently, "This balance will endure beyond us all." Athena's gaze shone. Wisdom is nothing without harmony to hold it. Apollo strummed once more, a chord bright as sunlight through clouds. The thunderbolt answered, its hum steady, its tone alive with belonging. Zeus spoke again, his words flowing like the river's eternal course. "Let thunder be not the sound of fear, but the echo of connection. Let it remind mortals and gods alike that we are bound as one." The air shimmered, as though creation itself embraced the vow. The silence was gone, replaced by a song that would not fade. Zeus turned his gaze to the horizon, where sky met the endless sea. The world stretched vast and beautiful, alive with rhythm, alive with hope. He smiled softly, his heart unburdened, lighter than in countless ages. The gods rose beside him, their unity shining brighter than any storm. Together they stood, not as rulers alone, but as keepers of balance. The thunderbolt rested calm, its glow no longer weapon, but eternal song. And with that, Olympus entered a new age, shaped by harmony, an age where thunder carried not dread, but the heartbeat of belonging. The world below listened, its silence transformed into music everlasting. And thus the story of Zeus and the thunder of Olympus was sung.